Welcome to Dr. Creepen's Dungeon. FBI and park ranger stories scare us because they blend the authority of official agencies with the eerie vastness of the unknown. The FBI evokes a world of classified cases, missing persons and hidden truths, while park rangers operate in remote wilderness where strange disappearances and unexplainable events go unnoticed. When these figures speak of things they can't explain, unnatural creatures, bizarre phenomena, or entire areas best left alone, it chills us because it suggests even those tasked with protecting us are outmatched by something lurking just beyond the edge of reason, as we shall see in tonight's collection of stories. Now, as ever before we begin, a word of caution. Tonight's tales may contain strong language as well as descriptions of violence and horrific imagery. That sounds like your kind of thing. Then let's begin. I used to be a park ranger, and there are some things people need to know about what's in the forests. By Ariabird. Part 1. 5 years ago, I became a park ranger. Well, I won't include the location of this event. I don't want anyone seeking out the utter horrors I've seen in that forest. Well, you think that you're prepared for whatever the forest might throw at you. You hear about the strange occurrences from other rangers, the missing persons cases, the unusual animals that are like nothing you've ever seen before. I was arrogant. I just blew off these stories. The other more experienced rangers told me there's nothing but paranoia or attempts to scare the new guy. But I was wrong. I was so very wrong. And I had to tell this event to someone, to warn people of the things that are out there hiding in those deep woods, just waiting for that bold individual to walk right into their clutches. And this is the reason I will never return to that forest, and now live in a large city. I avoid the forest that I used to love so much because I'm terrified of what I'll find in them, or what'll find me. 3 months into my time as a park ranger, it was the beginning of spring. Well, for the past 2 weeks, we've been receiving strange reports from park visitors and a few fellow rangers. People have been seeing strange warped-looking animals wandering about the park. The animals sighted often looked thin, with patches of missing hair. Their completely white eyes were gaunt and almost skeletal, and the proportions of the animals were said to just seem wrong, as if the animals were just not completely convincing copies of the animals they were supposed to be. Of course, most of us just assumed there was some sort of disease starting to affect animals in the park. There was an older park ranger who'd started at the park a month before the sighting started, named Briggs, who warned us that he'd seen this before. He was worried and was insisting we should close up the park. He said that these animals were dangerous and a safety hazard to anyone inside the forest, but he wouldn't say any more than that. He always just looked haunted when he talked about those animals, and said the forest wasn't safe anymore. Of course, we just wrote him off as being a kooky, paranoid older guy who probably had some kind of traumatic wild animal attack experience. We didn't even entertain the possibility that he might be right. And our hubris would be our downfall. I still remember something Briggs said to me one day shortly before he quit working at the park. It was always weird to me that Briggs was so disturbed by these animal reports and looked so haunted when he talked about them. He was a big man in his late 70s, but he could have easily wiped the floor with any youngster who tried to step up to him. He was an ex-Navy SEAL and a tough and real smart son of a gun. I was surprised he was so superstitious and paranoid that we should close up the park when it just seemed like some outbreak of a disease among some of the wildlife. All in all, it didn't seem like that big a deal at the time. Briggs wouldn't say specifically why he was so insistent on closing up the park. All he would say to me on the subject was, there's things in that forest you couldn't comprehend, boy. Things that'll break a grown man in two like a twig. Yeah, they're smart, you know. We think we're the apex predator of this world, but we couldn't be more wrong. If you aren't afraid, you're a fool. They're coming out in droves, I don't know why. But I don't plan on being here to find out. I've seen the horrors of war, Sonny, and what I saw on the battlefield is nothing compared to what I've seen in that forest. Do the wise thing. Listen to this old-timer before it's too late. I just wrote off what Briggs had told me. But now, I wish I hadn't. If I could go back and change what I'd done, well, it's too late now. And the horrors I saw will stick with me as long as I live. 1 week after Briggs warned us to close down the park, he quit and left the park behind. He was the smart one. He knew what was coming and didn't want to be around when all hell broke loose. I saw a glimpse of one of those strange animals on one of my patrols within that week, but it just looked like a sick raccoon to me. I thought nothing of it, and it was gone before I could attempt to catch it. But within 5 weeks of these sightings beginning, things had started to become stranger. We'd had 10 reports from park visitors of being attacked by these sickly-looking animals, and all of them had told us the same thing. The animals seemed intelligent now, like they were hunting them. Not only did they seem intelligent, they also seemed angry. We were bewildered and unsure of what to make of the situation. Well, we'd been trying to hunt down and put down the sick animals since the reports had started. We decided it was wiser to put down these animals to keep the sickness from spreading. But the animals remained elusive. The most any of us were able to do was catch occasional glimpses of them. But that all changed one night on the 6th week of the sightings. We'd also had 10 missing persons cases brought to our door within the past 2 weeks. Though we were unsure if this was attached to the sick animal sightings, and were unable to find any traces of the missing people, aside from some abandoned belongings and campsites. On a seemingly peaceful summer night, 3 of us were at the ranger station on the overnight shift. It was myself, Hank, a tough, hulking man in his early 30s, and Lida, a petite girl in her late teens who was interning at the park over the summer. We'd increased employee presence in the park due to the strange animal behavior of the past 2 or so months. It was close to 10 at night when we had a hysterical young blonde woman rushing into the station. She was covered in dirt and scratches, her clothing in tatters. She looked wild, like someone who'd been lost in the forest for weeks. She was sobbing, babbling, and collapsed into the arms of Hank. I started to check her for and treat her injuries as we tried to calm the woman down enough for her to speak clearly. After an hour, we managed to calm her down enough for her to be able to speak in somewhat coherent sentences. She was still hard to understand, but we managed to get the gist of what she had to say. The woman told us that she'd been camping in the park with her 4 friends. They'd set up camp in the morning and everything had seemed normal, but after the sun set, things started to become strange. They started to hear odd noises coming from the forest. They swore that they even heard talking. The voices sound garbled and growled, almost like someone who still wasn't completely sure how to form words. They'd started to feel on edge and had decided to leave first thing in the morning. They were too scared to venture out into the forest in the middle of the night with the strange noises they were hearing. She told us that after an hour of hearing the strange noises coming from the forest, a stumbling and almost hairless, sickly, gaunt coyote with pure white eyes came out of the forest and started venturing into the clearing where they'd set up camp. The coyote was making strange noises, like it was in pain, and the closer it got, the easier it was for them to see that the coyote seemed, off. She said that the coyote seemed just a little too long and too tall to be a coyote, like it had been stretched or something. As he got closer, her friend Trace got scared and decided to throw a rock at the coyote to scare it off. He threw a fist-sized rock at the coyote and hit it square in the head. Well, the rock hit it, and it collapsed to the ground. After the rock had hit the coyote, the forest seemed to go completely, still, almost like time had stopped. The only sounds the 5 of them could hear were their own terrified breathing and the crackling of the campfire. They thought Trace had killed it, and in the eerie silence, they could see that it wasn't breathing. But then the coyote's body jerked. Strange cracking noises could be heard from its body as it twitched and contorted. Its body changed into an almost humanoid shape as it rose up on 2 legs. The coyote then bared its teeth at the 5 of them in a sneer, and then opened its mouth. They heard the coyote speak 2 chilling words in a deep, guttural voice. "Feeding time." These 2 words seemed to send the forest into chaos as creatures of varying shapes and sizes swarmed from the tree line upon the 5 campers. Not all the animals even seemed to look like animals or like anything the girl had ever seen before. The creatures dragged the 5 of them through the forest to a cave, dragging them inside into what seemed to be a dark and massive cave system. This is something I found strange, considering that the only caves we had in this park were relatively small. There should have been nothing in that park like what this girl was describing. She told us that the animals dragged them into this cave system and trapped them in some kind of sticky, wispy substance that seemed almost like spiderwebs, but with the strength of thick rope. She said she could barely remember what happened after that, since she couldn't see at all in the pitch-black cave. All she could hear was the occasional screams of terror and pain from her friends, and the squelching noises of what she knew was her friends being eaten. She wasn't sure how long she was in there. What she guessed was every few days one of them would be taken and fed upon by what she could only guess were the creatures that took them into the caves. These creatures would also force-feed her water and food every so often, though it was clear from her gaunt and emaciated figure that they only fed her enough to keep her alive. She said she was fed some kind of mush she was never able to identify, only that it tasted utterly foul and almost like something rotten. When it was finally her turn to be eaten, she got lucky. She felt the threads that bound her being cut by what seemed to be some large claw or knife, and then she crashed to the cave floor. In a panic, she managed to grab a large rock. She struck out in the darkness towards where she believed the thing that had cut her loose to be. She could tell she made contact with something and heard a growl of pain as the creature hit the ground. Well, she didn't wait to figure out how much damage she'd done. She just ran. She ran for what felt like hours. She could hear the sounds of growls and what seemed like garbled speech that she couldn't understand all around her, but somehow she managed to avoid the creatures who were hunting for her. She managed to escape the cave system and just ran blindly through the forest in the dark until she found the ranger station. After finishing the story, she just burst into sobs and begged us to protect her from the monsters that she thought were still chasing her. We realized, after hearing her story, that she was part of a group of 5 campers who'd gone missing in the forest 2 weeks earlier. It was a group of college students who'd come to the park on summer break, but after the first day of their camping trip, their families and friends had stopped hearing from them. After 3 days of no contact from the students, we'd been notified that these campers were to be considered officially missing. We'd been contacted by the families even earlier than that, and had run some preliminary searches, but, like the 5 other missing persons that had cropped up in the past 2 weeks, we'd only found an abandoned campsite and belongings from the campers. After some closer inspection of the girl and some coaxing for her name, we managed to identify her as one of the 2 missing girls, Abigail. At the time, we believed that Abigail and her friends were likely drugged and attacked by some dangerous individuals in the forest. It was easier to think that Abigail had just crafted this unbelievable narrative as a way to comprehend what had happened to her while she was kept heavily drugged and docile. After all, what sane and reasonable person could honestly believe the wild tale that Abigail had spun? We left Abigail to eat and discussed among the 3 of us for a bit what to do with her. We were quick to decide that the best course of action was to notify law enforcement that we'd found Abigail, that there were likely a group of dangerous individuals currently residing in the park. The 3 of us felt very disconcerted after hearing Abigail's story, but knew that we couldn't very well abandon our post in the early hours of our shift. At that point, we all just wanted to get Abigail somewhere safe, and really wanted to leave the park, even though we couldn't. First, I tried to call the police through the office phone, but the line was dead. That far out in the middle of nowhere, phone service can be notoriously unreliable, so our mobiles couldn't be used to call the police either. The office phones were really our only way to contact the outside world, unless we felt like wandering about until we managed to possibly get a bar of service. With the phone lines down, we just decided to shut down for the night and take Abigail to the police station ourselves. As we were gathering our things and shutting off the lights for the night, we all moved with a mutual sense of urgency. Human instinct is a powerful thing, and at that moment all of us seemed to sense that something was wrong. Suddenly, Abigail started screaming loud enough that I was sure she could actually crack the windows. She started pointing towards the window straight across from the couch she sat on and screeching, "It's here! They're here! You have to help me! They're coming for me!" Initially, I thought that the girl was just hysterical. And that was until I saw it. The thing was exactly like Abigail had described. It was a too-tall, bipedal thing with gangly but muscled limbs and a patchy furred body. Well, it had to be at least 8 feet tall, with the way its torso was the only part initially visible when I looked out of the window. When it crouched down and tapped a clawed hand on the glass, I saw it had the head of a coyote with those milky white eyes. It grinned and let out a growl. "Come out," it purred in a gravelly, sing-song voice. Abigail screamed and backpedaled away from the window, hiding behind and latching onto Hank, while yelling that we needed to escape and begging us not to let them take her. I was frozen in fear. I was in no way equipped to handle this. I was just an average guy from Iowa with no special skills to speak of, besides being decently athletic with an encyclopedic knowledge of the outdoors. The only thing I could do at that moment was stand frozen and staring in horror at the thing peering at us through the window and chuckling at our terrified faces. Surprisingly, what snapped me out of my shell-shocked state was Lida. She was the only one out of us who didn't look scared. Instead, she looked angry. She smacked me across the face hard enough to leave my ears ringing. Then she proceeded to do the same with Hank. Hank and I shared mirrored surprised expressions that Lida was so quick to action, and that her small form could hit that hard. "Get your shit together. You all need to get the hell out of here," Lida yelled at the 3 of us. She then proceeded to remove a black pistol from her pastel blue backpack. A multitude of questions were rushing through my mind. At the top of that list was wanting to know what the hell that thing outside was, and right below that was bewilderment at Lida's 180 shift from a bubbly, perky teenager to acting like some battle-hardened veteran. I didn't have much time to spend on these musings, however, as we heard the window crack. The coyote thing had placed a hard punch to the window that had caused it to fracture. One more good hit would surely shatter it. Then Lida raised her gun and fired. The bullet shattered the window and sent the coyote crashing back to the ground. "Hurry! Get to Hank's truck! Get your fucking guns!" Lida yelled. Hank and I already had our shotguns out and ready due to the reports of animal attacks, so we were able to snatch them up quickly as Lida took the lead to head for the front door. Abigail continued to stick close to Hank, silently, with wide, terrified eyes as we moved cautiously for the door. Lida threw open the door, and I was shocked at what we were faced with. There were at least 30 of those warped animals that we'd heard so much about, and at the head of them was the coyote, with a now missing left arm, and the shoulder stump looking like it had healed over years ago. The coyote was the only one to be in bipedal form. The other animals looked warped in various shapes and sizes, some being recognizable animals and others simply looking like horrifying beasts that I'd never seen before. The only thing they all had in common was those white eyes. The coyote snarled and seemed to focus its attention on Lida. "You'll pay for that," it growled out. Lida sneered at the coyote in response. "Shove it, you overgrown flea bag," she shot back as she reached into her backpack and produced a flare which she was quick to light and hold out in front of her. The creatures recoiled at the light, and the coyote let out a deep, unearthly growl. She hurled the flare into the crowd of animals, and they scattered with unnatural speed back from the flare. "Go!" Lida yelled, and the 4 of us made a break for it to the parking lot while we had the opening. Lida took the lead, taking a shot at any of the creatures who tried to leap at us as we ran. Her bullets seemed to have a strange effect on these creatures. The moment they hit, black liquid bubbled up from the injuries, and the things would screech in pain as their bodies seemed to start to dissolve into that black liquid. Hank and I took a few shots at the things, but our bullets didn't seem to do much more than knock the creatures back briefly. When we did get to the truck, we all quickly piled in with Hank in the driver's seat, and he gunned it towards the exit to the park right after the engine roared to life. I let out a breath of relief, as I thought we were home free. "Don't start relaxing. We're not out of the woods yet," Lita scolded me, and then offered a hint of a smirk at the terrible joke she'd just made. I looked at her in disbelief for a moment, before an uneasy chuckle escaped from Hank and me, appreciating her attempt at calming the three of us, at least. Lita's smirk quickly faded as she focused her attention on the blurred view of the forest outside the car as Hank sped along the road. "So, who the hell are you?" Hank asked as he kept his eyes focused on the road. But it was clear the question was meant for Lita. It was an unspoken question that had been hanging in the air ever since Lita had jumped into action to deal with that coyote thing back in the ranger station. "I'll tell you what, Hank. I'll give you a nice, lengthy explanation after we're out of the forest full of things itching to get at us. Sound good?" she responded flatly. Hank gave a sigh in response. "Fine, fair enough. Do you at least know what those things are?" he pressed. "Yep," Lita said shortly, and then she sighed heavily. "All you need to know is that they're really hard to kill. If you want to bring them down, you better aim for the vitals. They won't stop moving until their bodies are completely destroyed. Their eyes are sensitive to light and they'll naturally flee from it. Fire also does a nice job of doing heavy damage to them. You manage to engulf one in flames and they'll go up like a bonfire doused in gasoline. But get back quick before they explode unless you want to go smelling like roadkill that won't wear off for weeks. Exception to the flame rule is that coyote thing. Fire will hurt it, but it's not enough to kill it. Yuck. If something fucks up, you leave me to deal with the coyote while you all focus on escaping. The coyote gets taken out, and the animals will stop attacking. There'll still be those things, but they won't be coordinated anymore. So I'll give you all the opening you need to get out," she explained. I stared at Lita with wide eyes, wondering how exactly it was she knew all this. I could tell that Hank was wondering the same thing, but it was clear this was all Lita was willing to tell us at the moment. Abigail remained quiet in the back seat with me. She was just staring out of the window with wide, vacant eyes. Not that I could blame her after all she'd been through. I guess she just needed time to process everything. Before I could speak up and ask Abigail anything, I heard a loud metallic crunch, and then we were airborne. I caught a flash of brown fur before the truck tumbled off the road, rolled down a steep hill, and came to a rest on its roof, having been stopped by a large pine tree. I sat, suspended in the air by my seatbelt with my ears ringing and my body trying to process the shock of the crash. I was snapped out of my dazed state by Lita cursing loudly. "Shit, the truck's fucked," she huffed out as she unclicked her seatbelt and crashed to the roof of the car. "Is everybody okay?" she asked as she shifted to look at the rest of us. Lita had a deep cut on her right cheek and forearm with some various cuts and bruises scattered across her form as well, but she seemed mostly unharmed. "I'm okay, I think," I choked out before undoing my seatbelt as well and hitting the roof of the car with a pained grunt. Aside from some cuts and being sore as hell, I was fine as far as I could tell. Hank was similarly mostly unharmed aside from a thick bit of glass that had gotten stuck in his left bicep, but that was able to be quickly tended to by Lita by taking the glass out and tearing off a bit of his sleeve to tie around the wound. Abigail appeared to have passed out from the crash. She had a few deep gashes on her forearms and some smaller scratches, but otherwise she seemed unharmed. However, she was unconscious, and it was difficult to assess how she really was until she woke up. Something odd I noticed about her that I wish I'd paid more attention to was that her blood looked almost black. But I just assumed I was seeing things because of the poor lighting and already being very on edge. Hank and I gently removed Abigail from the wreckage of the truck while Lita surveyed the damage and tried to figure out exactly where we were. The truck was an absolute wreck. The passenger side had collapsed inward like something heavy had made impact with it, and the resulting roll down the hill and crash into the pine tree had completely totaled the truck. We were lucky the truck was as sturdy as it was, or we would have surely walked away with worse injuries than we had. "We'll have to continue on foot from here," Leda said, before placing a hand over Abigail's mouth and giving her a hard smack to the cheek to see if she could wake her. Well, Abigail woke with a start, but her resulting scream was muffled by Leda's hand over her mouth. Once Abigail took in her surroundings, Leda tore the sleeves of her own shirt and used the cloth to treat Abigail's wounds on her forearms. "Come on, we need to get moving before they catch up with us," she barked. The three of us followed behind Leda, with Abigail in between the three of us, considering her unarmed and mostly unresponsive state. We all moved at a brisk walking pace, sticking to the shadows of the tree line, but never completely leaving the view of the road, just in case a car happened to come by. For a while we were able to continue on without interruption. The forest was almost completely quiet. Not even a sound from an insect could be heard. The only sounds we could hear were the occasional howl or growl in the distance, and the sounds of our footsteps and heavy breaths. Despite the terrors of the night, this was perhaps one of the most terrifying parts to me. That utter quiet, and the sense that at any moment one of those things could rush from the forest to do who knows what. And then the silence was broken as a thing that resembled a large deformed porcupine the size of a wolf rushed at us from the underbrush. Leda fired off a bullet into the creature's chest before it could make contact, and it screeched and quickly started to dissolve as it writhed on the ground. And the sounds of more growls and rushing footsteps could be heard as reinforcements pushed towards the area, attracted by the gunshot and the screeches of pain from the porcupine-like creature. "Run!" Leda yelled, before breaking off into a sprint. The three of us quickly followed, with Abigail pulling ahead of Hank and myself despite her frail condition. She had enough sense to at least not run out ahead of Leda, but her swift movements were startling. At the time, I chalked it up to adrenaline. We ran with the sounds of those creatures pursuing us, filling the forest around us. Leda, Hank, and I fired off the occasional shot when one of the things tried to jump at us from the forest, but we managed to keep ahead of the creatures. Or at least, that's what we thought, anyway. As we emerged out into a large clearing, the moonlight illuminated the coyote, who seemed to be even larger than the last time we'd seen it. Though its left arm was still missing, behind it stood a large half-circle of those creatures, of numbers of at least 50, who all stood waiting, hissing and snarling as if they desired nothing but to charge and tear us apart. Leda didn't hesitate to raise her gun and take a shot at the coyote, but when she did, all that sounded was an empty click. She was out of bullets. "Oh, shit," she said softly under her breath, quickly reaching to the side pocket of her backpack as if reaching for more ammo. Before she could reach the side pocket, a squirrel-like thing the size of a large dog came crashing down from the tree above and smacked into her back. Leda cursed as she struggled against the creature, but it held firm. Hank raised his shotgun to try and shoot the squirrel creature off of Leda, but as he made that move, he was knocked to the ground by the small, frail form of Abigail. She'd landed a hard elbow to his ribs that caused a loud crunch. Hank groaned in pain as he instinctively curled into himself, and Abigail took that opportunity to pin him to the ground on his stomach, with a too-wide grin settling on her features that showed sharp teeth. Her eyes were white now, like all those other fucking things. As she held him, her body started twisting and crunching as her limbs grew longer and distorted, with her skin taking on a papery white shade with a grey tinge. She bit into the side of Hank's neck, and he let out a pained, gurgled sound as she took a chunk out of the side of his neck. "Oh, damn it! Hank!" Leda yelled as she struggled against her captor. And then she looked at me with an intense gaze. "Get out of here!" she roared, with a tinge of desperation in her voice. And in that moment, my survival instincts took over, and I listened. It was as if my body had gone into autopilot while my mind raced. I thought that I couldn't just leave Leda and Hank behind. I had to stay and try to save them. But even as I thought this, I kept running like my body had a will of its own, separate from my mind. I tore through the forest, everything fading into a blur as I just focused on what was ahead of me. I don't know how long I ran for, but eventually I felt something heavy crash into me. I hit the ground roughly and felt the wind get knocked out of me, and I briefly saw the shadowed outline of a hulking figure before I fell unconscious from the hard impact. When I woke up, everything was still dark. I wondered if I was even still alive. All I knew was that it was dark and I couldn't move. Then I heard a groan from nearby. Oh, shit. I heard Leader's voice say softly before I heard a slight rustling like something was struggling. Leader? I croaked out in question, and then I heard a gasp from nearby. Oh, thank fucking goodness you're still alive, she breathed. Then she let out a more frustrated sound. But that means they caught you. Look, I have a plan to get us out of here, but you need to do exactly what I say if you want to survive this, she said in a hushed tone. What about Hank? I whispered back, and Lita was quiet for a long moment before she spoke up again. Hank's beyond saving now. You don't want to know, trust me, she said with a pained whisper. Now stop talking. You don't want them knowing you're awake. And whatever you do, don't let them feed you anything, she said with a renewed, steely tone. I did as I was told and shut up after that. I don't know how long we stayed in that darkness. I could feel myself suspended in the air and completely unable to move. Felt like I was wrapped up in some kind of cocoon made of a sticky substance similar to that of a spider's web. It was exactly the same conditions that Abigail had described in her story. The only sounds I heard all that time were an occasional shuffling, which I assumed to be Lita, and the distant sound of footsteps and soft growls. After what could have been hours or even days of just staying silent in that oppressive darkness, I heard a ripping noise, and then a loud thunk and a grunt. I wanted to speak, but remembered Lita's words and forced myself to remain quiet. I just waited and hoped that was the sound of Lita escaping. I heard footsteps approaching me and held my breath while attempting to press myself back against the stone wall behind me on a deep-rooted instinct to cringe away from the unknown thing that was approaching. And then I heard a ripping noise shortly before my bindings gave way and I went crashing unceremoniously to the rock floor below. While I lay there with the wind knocked out of me, Lita ripped the sticky bindings away from me and I quickly scrambled to my feet. You're gonna have to trust me. Stay close to me and I'll get you out of here, Lita whispered in my ear. I nodded before realizing she couldn't see me in the pitch darkness, and instead whispered back, okay. It was all I could think to say at that moment. I heard a strange crunching noise, and then Lita grabbed my hand and started to swiftly lead me along, as if she was able to see where she was going. I noticed that her nails felt sharper than before, as she held tight to my hand. And I felt fear bubble up as I wondered if she was becoming something like what Abigail had turned into. But I forced myself to bury that fear. Right then, Lita was my only chance of making it out of that place. I had to trust her. I didn't have any other option. We moved through the darkness for what seemed like forever. We seemed to be moving through some sort of massive tunnel or cave network like the one from Abigail's story. We'd mostly move with hurried steps, but on various occasions Lita would stop me and pull me into little crevices or side tunnels when the sounds of footsteps neared us. Then, after the footsteps had faded, we would continue on our way again. I began to wonder if we'd be wandering this cave network until we finally just collapsed. I could already feel the hunger, the dehydration, and exhaustion gnawing at me. But I kept pace with Lita, forcing myself to keep walking even when it felt like my legs were turning to stone. And I finally saw a beautiful sight. There was light streaming into the stony area about 15 feet ahead of us after we turned a corner. As we drew closer to the light, I could see that it was moonlight streaming into a large hole of some sort that looked to have been dug by massive claws. The hole was roughly 5 feet above us and led into some kind of tunnel to the surface. I felt my heart sink as I realized there was no way we could reach the hole to escape through it. We would have to continue on back into the darkness. "Hey, I'll boost you up to the edge of the hole. Do you think you can pull yourself out?" Lita spoke up as I let myself fall into a crestfallen state. I looked at Lita's petite 5-foot form in bewilderment. I felt my eyes widen as I finally was able to take in her appearance. Lita's form had changed. She'd grown more muscled and she looked practically feral. Her short black hair was wild and she was covered in dirt, but she looked uninjured despite her dirty appearance and very torn, blood-stained clothing. Her nails had turned to claws, and when she spoke I could see her teeth had changed to sharpened points. When I finally met her eyes, they were no longer that piercing hazel green that they had been. Oh, now her pupils had changed to slits and her eyes were a glowing gold shade. I instinctively took a few steps back from her as I took in her inhuman features, and she finally grabbed my wrist. "Now isn't the time. I told you. If you want to make it out of this, you're going to have to trust me," she said firmly. I slowly nodded, and she released me in return. Then she laced her fingers together and placed her palms upward to allow me to step on them so she could lift me to the hole. I complied, and she lifted me with surprising ease. I dug my fingers into the dirt and scrabbled my way up through the hole and out into the forest above. I collapsed onto the ground on my back, taking in deep lungfuls of air for a moment, and let out a sort of laugh of relief to be away from that horrid darkness. But then I remembered Lita. I looked down through the hole that appeared to be an animal burrow hidden beneath a large, thick bush from the outside. Lita looked up at me with glowing golden orbs before she jumped upwards and dug her clawed hands into the dirt. I grabbed her hands and helped pull her out of the hole, though I'm not entirely sure she needed my help at all. Once we were both out into the forest, Lita held her hand up when she saw me about to speak. No questions. Not until we're out of here. Don't talk, just follow and do what I say. That's how you're going to make it out to see the sunrise," she said in a voice that left no room for argument. I just nodded in response to show her I understood. She nodded back, and then we were off. The forest was still as strangely quiet as it was when we were captured, and I wondered if it was even the same night anymore. I had no idea how many days had passed since we'd been taken down into the cave network. We could have been down in that cave system for days, for all I knew. We just walked in silence as the moon moved across the sky. I didn't ask where we were going. All I knew to do at that point was to follow Lita and hope that she had a plan. Lita seemed to tense some as we walked, but she said nothing beyond making a circular upward motion with her hand that I took to mean as, "Be on your guard." You're quite the clever little girl. Such a shame that you chose the wrong side of this war." A deep rumbling voice spoke that seemed to echo around us. Lita let out a soft growl in response. "Yeah? If you're so upset about it, then why not come and handle me yourself? Unless you're too scared to face me directly. You seem chicken shit with the way you're having all your lackeys do the fighting for you." She barked back, which earned cold laughter from the voice, which I assumed belonged to the coyote, since it was the only one of the creatures I'd heard actually speak up to that point. Then a dark shape seemed to emerge from a nearby oak tree that quickly shifted and took the form of that coyote I was beginning to grow familiar with seeing. It was grinning at us with its head cocked to the side ever so slightly, as if it were amused. "As you wish," he said before he rushed at us with alarming speed. Lita was backhanded hard enough that she went flying through a number of trees which crashed to the ground as she skidded to a stop on all fours roughly 30 feet away. The deep gouges in her forearm she'd gotten from the coyote's claws were already healing as she charged at him. The coyote let out a roar that was mixed with laughter as Lita charged as if it was relishing the challenge that had been presented to it. The ensuing fight was one I only caught glimpses of as I attempted to distance myself from the two. I saw glimpses of Leda savagely tearing into the coyote and drawing inky black blood from the thing with each hit. Oh, she was superhumanly strong with the way she was able to send the coyote flying. It had grown to be at least twice her size by that point, with a far more muscled figure than its previously gaunt form. The fight between the two seemed as if it would never end, as they destroyed the forest around them. Every time the two dealt injuries to the other, they would heal almost as fast as they were given. Trees felled around the two, and slowly the battle zone was changed more into a clearing filled with jagged stumps and fallen trees. Despite Leda's strength, she still seemed out of her league against the coyote. As fast as she was able to heal, the coyote still dealt more damage than Leda, and seemed to land attacks on her far more often than she did to it. And yet she never seemed to tire or give up. She just looked at the coyote with this deep-seated rage as she stubbornly continued to battle it. I stayed hidden behind a large rock on a small cliff near the battlefield. Well, I should have run, but I just couldn't as I watched in horror, and yet almost wonder, as the two superhuman entities clashed. I just silently hoped that their fight would not come near me, as I knew I'd only get in the way or get hurt in this battle between two things who were far beyond the strength of a normal person like me. I could already see Leda was facing a challenge against the coyote, with it only having one arm, and I wondered just how dangerous would this thing be without that handicap. Then I quickly pushed that thought away, as I felt panic overtaking me at that idea. Whatever the hell this thing was, it was a monster of overwhelming strength that I could still barely fathom the existence of. Finally, the coyote got the upper hand. If you could even really call the hulking, patchy-furred thing a coyote anymore. It managed to pin Leda to the ground with its massive clawed hand holding her down by her throat and upper chest. Leda choked and gagged as she clawed and kicked at the coyote's arm, but it just laughed at her struggling, even with her claws tearing chunks from its arm. I felt panic build up in my chest at the sight. I felt as if I had to do something to help Leda, but I had no idea what to do. If Leda wasn't able to stop that thing, there was no way I stood a chance. But I decided that I couldn't leave Leda to just perish at the hands of this thing. I'd already lost Hank. I couldn't just stand by and lose her too. I picked up a heavy rock from the ground nearby and attempted to stealthily approach the coyote while its attention was focused on Leda. "You make such delicious prey, little girl. Such a shame you didn't last longer. It's been so long since I've been provided with such a challenge. My compliments. Even your mother wasn't quite so strong as you. But alas, you'll suffer the same fate as she did." Coyote hummed with glee, while Leda glared up at it with seething hatred in her expression. "I'll kill you," she snarled back in a choked, gasping voice as she more viciously attempted to struggle loose from the grip of the thing. Still so spirited. I'm sure that fire in you will only make you even more delectable. A morsel." The coyote chuckled then, simply seeming amused by Leda's fury. The coyote opened its jaws wide as its face split into 4 even pieces and opened like horrific flower petals to reveal a large black maw lined with white needle-sharp teeth, and out from its throat flickered a deep red tongue, reminiscent of a massive octopus tentacle lined with suckers that had silver spikes at the centers. I rushed forwards to hurl the rock right at the head of the creature and hopefully distract it long enough to get Leda loose. The thing closed in as if aiming to bite into Leda with its monstrous mouth. I felt a sinking in my chest. I was too late. Even with Leda's astounding healing abilities, there was no way she could survive her head being bitten off. But then the thing's chest exploded in black gore as a loud bang sounded throughout the forest. Its body was soon torn apart by more explosions as more loud bangs filled the forest. Leda bolted to her feet as the creature's body started to dissolve into that black liquid I'd seen the other things dissolve into. Its head flopped to the ground and changed back to the more coyote-like shape. Somehow it even spoke, with its head now being the only solid piece of it left. "This isn't Over, it hissed out. You haven't seen the last of me. We will have our victory, it gasped, and then its head exploded in another burst of gore, and all that was left of the beast was puddles of black goo that quickly dried and floated up into the air in little black flecks as the sky started to change with the first shades of dawn. I felt the rock drop from my hands as a familiar voice spoke from the edge of the tree line. You sure made quite a mess here, huh? I turned and couldn't quite believe my eyes. There Briggs stood with a shotgun in hand and a proud grin present on his face. Leader gave Briggs a withering look in response. Took you long enough, Grandpa. Those damn reinforcements you promised were almost too late. We lost some good people while you jackasses sat around with your thumbs up your asses, she scolded the older man. I felt my mind begin to swim as I tried to process all the events that had transpired over the course of this terrifying affair. As I tried to take in the scene in front of me, of the heated back and forth between Leader and Briggs, all their voices sounded like, well, to me, they were faraway echoes. Blackness started to form at the edges of my vision, and then I fell unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a hospital in the nearest city to the state park. I was told I'd been transported to the hospital from a clinic in the nearby town to the state park. According to the hospital staff, I'd been brought in with deep gashes, dehydrated and emaciated. I'd apparently woken up and spoken deliriously of monstrous animals attacking. And so it was assumed I'd been attacked by either a bear or a wild cat, based on my injuries, and had become lost in the forest for days before eventually being discovered by two hikers. At first I attempted to argue and recount what really happened, but I quickly figured out that the hospital staff just assumed I was still delirious. They weren't going to believe me, and I did discover that it had been a week and a half since the night that those things first attacked. After I was discharged from hospital, I immediately quit my job at the state park. My supervisors didn't ask any questions. I saw that a missing persons report had been filled out for Hank, but no law enforcement ever questioned me about what happened at the state park. In fact, there were never any reports at all of what happened in the state park that night. And after that night, the strange animal sightings in the park just fizzled off soon after. I thought about going to the police and telling them my story about what had happened, but I knew that they would just ignore what I said. After all, who would believe such a strange story? I hadn't believed Abigail at first. Surely no one would believe me either. Since then, I've moved across the country to a large city in an arid climate full of flatlands and desert. I want to be far away from any forest. I know that the media and law enforcement won't believe my story, but I recently heard about this subreddit from my girlfriend. She's the only one I've told this story to since then, and she's the only one who believes me. She encouraged me to post this here. I think she hopes it'll be therapeutic for me. But I decided to post this story because I want to warn anyone who'll listen. Watch out for the forests. There are things out in those deep woods far beyond human comprehension. Whatever I saw in that forest, I have no doubt that there's more out there. I remember what it said to Leader. It mentioned a war. It said it would be coming back. The people that go missing out in the forests, those strange things that happen. Maybe there really isn't a logical explanation for all of it. And so, if you start to see animals that look wrong with those white eyes in a forest, get out while you still have the chance. Or they might just come for you next. Well, I hope that my tale will serve as a warning to all of you who choose to listen to it. I haven't seen Leader or Briggs since that night. I can only hope they're doing well wherever they are. Well, I still wonder what those animal things were that attacked me that night. I'm too scared to really go looking for the answers I want. As far as I'm concerned, I hope I never have to step into another forest again. But another part of me has started to become less scared over the years. I feel angry for all the horrors those things brought on. They killed innocent and good people like those college kids and Hank. I want to know what they are, and I want to stop them. There's a state park a few hundred miles from me, and I've seen increasing reports of animal attacks and missing persons there lately. Maybe I should go there and warn them, before things go too far. The strange cases of a Philadelphia cop. Hey guys, so I've decided to put some of my weirdest cases out there for the world to see. The goal? To show you just how weird and curious the world you live in truly is. I'm going to start with my weirdest one yet. I'll say one thing. Keep $5 on you at all times. You'll see what I mean. A 10 spot might be even better though. Right. Let's begin with the house. My name's Dan Josephson, and I've been a cop in Philadelphia for about 4 years now. I thoroughly enjoy my job. Well, in a year of 365 days, 90% of those are pretty great. But at least once or twice a year, there's some strangeness I'm involved in. Didn't always used to be like this. Well, up until a couple of years ago, I'd never once believed in anything supernatural. Maybe I shouldn't say supernatural, because that's not what she called it. Well, she told me after she'd saved me from a dog-man hybrid thing. Well, that, if it exists, then it's natural. If it flies, it's natural, even if I can't see that its wings are visible. If it walks, it's natural. If you could test it, it's a natural thing, no matter how weird it seemed. 2 years ago, she saved me from one of those natural things, as it tried to eat me to death. She explained to me that she wasn't some Buffy the Vampire Slayer type. I just happened to get lucky that she was in the area. But that it worked out for the best because she needed somebody on the police force to be aware of what was going on in Philly. So I called my chief and a few other superiors. She needed to show them the underbelly of the city. Well, the whole world. It took one showing to get them to believe her. But this sucked for me, though, as whenever weird shit happened, they called me, and I had to call her if she was in town, which she often wasn't. The thing that gave me a bit of a leg up was her burning a mark on my upper arm. It gave me some protection from the shitty things in the dark, and sometimes in the light. We worked together on a few cases, including one where she lost a friend and needed to set things right. I asked her, if she wasn't a Buffy type, what exactly did she do? She said in a matter-of-fact way that she did 3 things: collected, protected, and erased things. It was safer if I didn't know the rest. Now I needed her for all those functions. For the past month, there have been a series of people going missing from the Overbrook area of town. People going missing in a city this large isn't new, but all going missing on the same block was weird. It was all around a single house on Woodbine near 66. The first was a kid on the way home from school. Neighbors said the kid went in after being asked to come and help a lady on the floor. The next was a painter who'd been called for a job, a plumber to fix a leak in the basement, a window replacer to fix several cracked window panes, a couple of men who went through the home's yard and never came out the back. There were several others, and it caught the attention of the local media. As it closed in on Halloween, the incidents ticked up. There was something odd about the house on Woodbine. Most homes in Philly are row house types, where each home is basically a townhouse or brownstone. But in some of the newer or less population-dense areas, some places had the standard house types. Large front and backyards built on city blocks. I haven't worked a Halloween in 3 years. That was my day. Halloween was my Christmas. I appreciated being on call instead of on duty, so if I was called, then it had to be important. I made it to the house and decided to look around as the neighbors looked on as people got ready for trick-or-treating. The chief didn't want anybody going near that house tonight and not coming back out. It was a decent-looking place, large porch, gabled overhangs, Gothic pillars, large paned windows, all the usual. Nothing looked off about the place. But as I got out of my cruiser and got closer, my upper arm felt hot. When I backed away, it cooled again. I walked closer, and the heat returned. I rolled up my sleeves to check, and I watched the mark light up as I neared the home. Okay, this place looked normal, but obviously wasn't. She'd always told me that when that thing tried to eat me, I had the taint now, which meant that if I somehow survived with help or on my own, others like it and her could smell it on people like me. It was like a pheromone. Something might not happen ever, or something could if it felt like it. But her mark would not only alert me to others like her, but also protect me from those things. I picked up the police tape and cordoned off the house. And then I grabbed my cell. "Hey Dan, what's up?"
"Abby, I think about a haunted house. You interested?" I asked, and without missing a beat,
"Sure. Give me the address and I'll head over." Well, relief washed over me. But as I looked at the house again, I swear the 2 front windows glowered at me in anger. Now we'll continue with a very strange friend of mine, Abigail. I waited for Abigail. She lived near the University of Penn College, so it took her a while to get my side with the traffic. She also told me she had to pick up some weird chick. Well, Abby's weird, so I have no idea how weird this other chick was going to be. As the sun began to go down, I noticed the house's glowering gaze seemed to follow me as I moved around the tape. But the people noticing me didn't seem to notice anything strange. And I think that's how the house was able to convince people it was safe. It just looked like a damn house, nothing creepy or odd, just a house. Now, imagine a mailman delivering a package. She knocks on the door and hears, "Come on in. You can leave the package on the table." And then it's bye-bye mailman. At least, that's how I see it. Abby eventually pulled up in her car with the other chick that she'd called weird. She looked okay to me, nothing overly strange. She wasn't some weird goth or trippy hippie girl. She just had on jeans, a white shirt, and a light jacket underneath. "Hey, Abby, what's up? Took you a while to get here. Traffic bad?" I asked her. "No, Michelle here thinks she's still sleeping, and this is all a dream. So I had to convince her to wake up and go to the bathroom, put some clothes on. Michelle, this is Dan. Dan, Michelle," Abby said to me as she sat on the car's hood. I noticed that I could be the cat that she always talked about. It's never a good thing to look at, honestly. And then I noticed what could be the cat that she was always talking about. Well, it was never a good thing to look at, honestly. Half fur with a half skull head and the ribs of its guts sticking out. I shuddered whenever I saw it. But Cat, that was her cat's name, was never aggressive and seemed to be a feline version of the girl Michelle, just here and bored looking. "Hey, Michelle, I'm Dan," I said as she took my hand and shook it. "Hi, Dan. Question, will you be haunting my dreams too?" she asked with sincerity. Probably not. I don't think this is a dream. Not me, her, the cat thing, or this neighborhood. But if it helps you, I'm okay with that," I told her. "Cool beans. So, what's going on here?" she asked. And that's when Abby stepped forward. "So, what's up? You guys think this house is legit haunted?" she asked me. "Yeah, there's been at least 10 people seen in or around this place, and never seen again. Just missing, nothing else. No blood, no guts, no crime, just gone," I said, doing the explosion thing with my hands. She said, looking at the house. "Michelle, you notice anything odd about the place?" Abby asked her. Well, I can't lie, Michelle was cute. I have a thing for Awkwafina, and she reminded me of her, just taller. Michelle walked forward and under the tape. She went to the front of the house and stared for a few minutes. The cat thing went next to her, wagging its tail. "She your apprentice or something? She gonna be the next you?" I asked. "No, I was asked to find her and take her with me on a few assignments, but
I have no idea what the people I work for want with her, so I make sure I show her the ropes just in case. It's just weird how she thinks this is a dream. Well, I guess it's her way to cope with all the shit she's seen so far. Abigail shrugged. Michelle checked down the alley, then back to the front. Finally, she nodded her head and walked back to us as Abby crossed her arms, waiting for the report. I don't think it's haunted. I think it's possessed, maybe, Michelle said as the cat thing jumped on the car's hood and sat next to Abby. How so? Well, the windows on the front porch just frowned at me, and towards the bottom the lights inside seemed to glow to a pinch and then relax. When I looked in the alley, the bay window sort of wiggled like an ear twitch. An ear twitch? On a house? I said incredulously. Yep, Michelle said, adding, I noticed the base of the house kind of shift a bit when I leaned in. Kind of like it wanted to bend in on me. Good job, Michelle, Abby said. I'll need you to go to the alley and keep an eye on the bay window for me. Kat, I need you to go to the other side of the house and keep an eye out on the other window. Anything I can do to help? I asked her. Yeah, stay behind the police tape, Abby said with a giggle. So, what's the plan? If the house is possessed, should we call a priest or a shaman or something? Oh, damn, they wouldn't be able to help. Probably just get killed feeding this thing, Abby said, stretching. Okay, so, again, what's the plan? Well, I'm going to go knock on the front door, see what happens. Then I'll check the handle. If it's locked, I'm breaking in. If it's not, I'm walking in. Then I'll close the door and wait, she said, watching her two companions walk around to the sides of the house. Oh, you're an odd and curious girl, Miss Mitchell. You're pretty damn weird, too, I stated emphatically with a smile. She smiled in return and walked up to the house, and that's when I noticed a few people forming near the police tape. I had a couple of stragglers here and there asking what was happening. Now, given Philadelphia's history, they were probably expecting a bomb to get dropped or something. But I just told them to stand back and get out of the way. Abigail walked up to the door and then turned to look at me. She smiled, and I noticed her eyes had that fiery amber glow to them. She was smiling, but she took this seriously. She knocked once. Nothing. She waited and knocked again. Nothing. Then I heard a click. Abby's head dropped, and she shook it side to side. I watched as she grabbed the handle and put her hand on the door. Then I heard a snap and a crack. The house's windows seemed to widen as if in shock. And then Abby walked into the house. And then the craziest shit happened. You know how when you go to a restaurant or a fast food spot, you order your food and sit down to eat it? It tastes good, but it just doesn't sit right. You drink something hoping it goes down, but it doesn't. Your body heaves a little, your eyes flicker or widen as you feel the bile rising, the vomit coming, and then the explosion happens. Well, Abigail was in the house for maybe 30 or 40 seconds tops. The door flew open, and Abigail came flying out of the house, over the pavement and onto the street. Holy shit! I cried out as I watched her fly over me and land on the street hard. She rolled over a couple of times and stopped on her back, arms splayed out to her sides. I rushed over to her as the cat thing and Michelle looked, but stayed where they were. As I got closer, she coughed as the crowd grew and people looked on. Then I heard a giggle and then a laugh. She sat up and shook her head. Dude, you all right? What the hell was that? I asked her as I helped her to stand. I'm good, she said, laughing some more. What's so funny? You just got kicked out of a house, by the house. Well, the house isn't just a house. The house is the guardian. There's another being in there, she said, walking back towards the house. The house didn't even try to hide its surprise, and its anger was palpable. I turned a bit away, and the crowd scattered some as they all noticed the house's slight movements. Where are you going? I asked her. Oh, to kill it, she shouted back as she reached for the door. Kill what? I asked with genuine surprise. The house, silly. Now, Abigail is different from us, but let's continue on, you'll see. Hey, before you go in there, can I ask? How do you kill a house? Abby responded. Well, kinda, yeah. I mean, the only two ways I know to kill a house is to wreck it or burn it down. And I shrugged, confusedly. Well, we won't be doing that to this house, Abby stated. She then stood in front of the house and looked at it and motioned me over. I take it you've seen a horror movie or two in your life? Abby asked, waiting for my answer. Yeah, I've seen a few. Why? Well, you know how at the end of the movie, and the heroes think they've triumphed, and the movie ends with either the house reforming later, or the monster laughs, or some silly shit like that? I nodded. Well, the first house I killed did that before I knew what to do to stop it. I went in, did what I had to, and then 5 years later it came back. Well, the only reason I even thought about it wasn't a missing persons report or a news article. No, I was driving to the store one day and went to another part of town and, well, I saw the house again, she said, putting her hands on her hips. I spoke to people who'd been doing this longer than I had, and they called them rebounders. That's when a house is excised or destroyed, but the people who did the deed never do a full clean-up or follow-up, she told me. So, when you kill this house guardian thing, then what? We kill the bitch on the inside using the house to make a profit, Abby said, turning to Michelle and the cats. Dan, call your cop friends to lock this neighborhood down. Or just make up a lie or whatever. This is Philly. I mean, there are gas leaks here all the time. Still confused, I did as she asked, and within 25 minutes we had the house cordoned off even further, and the neighborhood evacuated fully. I watched as Abby spoke to her little crew of, not monster hunters. Well, when they were done, she came back to me. Dan, I need another favor from you, she said. What now? I asked in return. Can you get me $5 from the ATM while I go back in? I can get 10. That's the minimum. Cool. Okay, go grab it real quick. I ran across the street and found the ATM and kept looking back the entire time. I didn't see Abigail anymore. Well, she must have gone back inside the house. I pulled out my card and hastily inserted it. I tried to hurry quickly when I heard the shattering of glass and the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. I turned, quickly placing my hand on the gun at my hip. There was a lazy boy on the ground and one of the front windows was shattered. I heard my money coming out as I saw pots, pans, and a TV come flying out of the house from a variety of windows. Michelle, break the windows, I heard Abby yell from inside the place. The young woman picked up rocks and tossed them at the windows. A couple of the bay windows broke as she moved about desperately. I grabbed my money and ran back to the house. The house seemed to grimace as each window shattered. And then Abby came flying out of the house again. Get out of my house, came a ghastly, scratchy female voice. I paused as that voice hit my very soul. It sounded wrong, so wrong. My skin crawled. Well, even the dogman thing didn't sound this bad. I could see the other cops shuddering, and we all kind of looked away from the house, not wanting to draw the attention of whatever was in there. I felt like a child being punished for something I hadn't done. Oh, fuck, Abby called out as she got up and ran back into the house. Abby, I called out. I noticed that the Cad and Michelle hadn't moved from their positions, well, outside of trying to break the windows. The voice called out again. I think we all heard it this time, as it was louder and even more angered. Why must you bother me? What have I done to you? This is my neighborhood. The voice spoke, not to us, but to Abigail. I assume Abigail must have been talking to her, but we just couldn't hear her. No, you will not. I've lived here for years. These people know me. A crash came again, and a squeal-like cry of pain. Leave it be, damn you, the voice cried. How dare... I heard as the wall exploded and the stove came out of it.
Take that, you bitch," I heard Abigail call right before she was shoved from the house again, but this time without as much force. She stood and climbed back inside. I moved to look at the walls opening, and that's when I noticed that all of the furniture and items from the home were leaking, even the things that shouldn't leak. No, not leaking. It was bleeding. Well, not blood, not like ours, but some oily ichor. It was coming from everything. I mean, everything she tossed out bled. I put on my gloves and felt the couch. It was soft, organic. Was this stuff alive? Was the guardian an actual thing? She was killing the house, one organ at a time. I guess that what you put in your home made it a living thing. I mean, your pictures, furniture, food, and even those you invite in. They all helped to make the house a living organism. But whatever was in this house was truly alive, not metaphorically, but real. "Stop!" The cry came weaker as Abigail ripped out its inside in the cool evening air. As the house seemed to lurch to the side, I could see the walls breaking and bending, allowing me to see inside. I could see what looked like tentacles writhing from the ceiling, trying to hit Abigail. Two of the things tried to shove Abigail out as she held the walls, stopping their push. She turned to look outside for a split second. Dear God, she looked terrifying. Her eyes, that deep, fiery amber they were when she'd saved me, well, they scared me then and they scared me now. Her veins pulsing like lava beneath her skin, and now the smell of something cooking, and her hands glowing orange-red. She grimaced and pulled herself back in as the tentacles flopped to the ground, seemingly dead. I hadn't noticed it before, but within the house I could see her marks burned into the walls and the ceilings and the doors. "Human whore, you've killed it. You've killed my home. My home." The voice came again. The house lurched to the side, and the cat moved back some and sat down and looked up. There came a crunch and explosion of wood on the roof. I could see a figure on the roof now. Some of the other cops followed my gaze as I looked up. On that roof was a terrible horror. A woman hunched, tall, with scraggly clothes and sagging breasts. Her eyes were pinpoints of red. Her arms were long, too long for her body. And she moved slowly and wheezed. She reached back into the home and pulled out a large bowl-like thing, complaining to herself, itself, the whole time. "Crazy bitch, human bitch. You take my home, I take you." She plunged her arm inside the giant pot and swirled it around. A few of the cops pulled their firearms and aimed at the thing. "No, wait. Let Abigail handle this. This is her call," I called out. They looked at me and then at each other, but they did lower their weapons. I had no idea how this thing would react. I mean, we were not Abigail. As the witch thing on the roof swirled, Abigail called from the second-floor window as she climbed out onto the roof. "Dan?" I looked to see her eyes back to normal. "Did you get the money?" Yeah," I called back. "Good." She smiled at me, climbing up to the upper roof like a damn spider. She went right after the giant pot and stuck her arm inside and then elbowed the witch creature. "You will die, and they will die." She pointed down to us. I shuddered as she looked my way. "Nobody's going to die except you in this damn house," I heard Abigail call. "Oh, I'm done here, done. Done with you, with them. The flash fire will consume this house and you. You've made a forever enemy in me, human. I'll come again. I'll take you home, then your life." The witch growled as she pulled some flaming liquid from her pot and slammed it onto the house. The house screamed as though wood could give voice to its anguish as the flames and liquid coated it. "Ah, shit," I heard Abigail call out as she jumped off the roof. The house screamed and died in mystical flames. It began to dissipate as though it was dissolving into its base parts. Abigail then smiled, and the house vanished in a puff of anguish and smoke, and the lot was empty of the house, and the witch thing had fled beneath the house as it collapsed in on itself. Well, you did it. Do I want to know what you were doing inside that house? Abby shook her head. We're not finished yet, she said quietly, as she pulled 3 sticks from behind her back. What's that? I asked, pointing at the bundles. She lifted the sticks, looking at me, and smiled. You and me, my good man. We're going to take a trip to hell. Do you still have that $5 on you? I looked down, my hands shaking. I hadn't even noticed it. Then I pulled out the $10 bill. Oh, damn, look at you, rich boy. Abigail smiled, then placed the sticks on the ground, breaking them, forming a crude circle. Then another, and another, and another, and so on, until she had 6. They looked like a planet with moons stretching into the distance. Confused still, I replied after a few moments. It's, $10. You'll see, she said, wiping the gore from her arm and the blood from her elbows. She mixed them, then tossed the wet stuff into the air. It landed in the first circle, then moved to the third one, then back to the first. Oh, thank goodness, Abigail said. Okay, buddy boy, time to go, she said to me, smearing my forehead with the foul-smelling gunk. Cat, you and Michelle stay here. Hopefully this won't... Well, I'll be back, eventually. One thing I can say about you, Abigail, is that you make my dreams entertaining, Michelle said, clasping her shoulder. Whatever, Abby said, shaking her head. She pulled me close, and then we jumped onto the impossibly small circle, and then... thunder. So, yeah, that happened. You're going to be wondering why I haven't gone insane yet, and if this case is weird, what are the others going to be like? Well, listen on, my friend. My head rang as I rolled on the ground, trying to gather my thoughts. The sound of thunder filled my ears. There was so much thunder, and it was loud. So loud. I could feel the pressure on my skin, and as the pressure from each boom pressed upon my chest, I moaned as my stomach revolted against today's lunch. I clutched at the dirt, struggling to open my eyes, and then I puked. The empty sensation made me feel better, but not by much. Better. I also felt a wave of intense anger creeping over me. I don't know why, but it was so intense and seemed to rise with each passing moment. It was insidious, filling me like a tub filling with water. As I opened my eyes, I saw the subject of my ire. The intense red of my vision didn't help, and my teeth clenched as she looked at me and walked over. She knelt in front of me as I scowled at her, and then she slapped me. Oh, what the hell was that for? I asked, noticing the anger subside, but my vision remaining red. Yeah, I know that look. It's the same look I had for a while when I was abandoned here. It creeps in and everything pisses you off. Everything. But once you know that it's this place that makes you angry, its hold lessens somewhat, she told me, standing up and turning away from me. And, where is here? I asked, then immediately grew quiet as the immensity of the situation hit me. That thunder was still booming. Oh, dear God, where are we? I asked, as I realized it wasn't my vision that was red. Everything was tinged in reds, blacks, and grays. The environment itself, even the sky, was red. Then I noticed what inhabited the sky. Now, imagine if the moon wasn't millions of miles away, but maybe just 100. Then there was another moon, and another, and another, and so on. What the hell? A hell. One of many, and my former home, for a year at least, Abigail stated matter-of-factly, as she placed her hands on her hips. Then she turned to me, and that smile returned. Her eyes had that amber glow again. Welcome to Tartarus, City, or hell. Well, it's not Hades, though. No, not Hades. Hades is a lot grayer. Tartarus? Mythological Tartarus? I asked, bewildered, the anger resuming again. My eyes felt the pressure as it came again, but much more slowly, now that I was aware. Cop training was kicking in. "Oh, Tartarus doesn't exist. It can't," I said as the thunder boomed. "I mean, if this place exists, then—" "Dude." Abigail turned to look at me, hands on hips and her head tilted to the side with twisted lips. My eyes glow. "I saved you from a dogman, and you and your cop buddies just watched me kill a house. A house. Then I pulled you into a pool of blood and we went straight to one of the hell dimensions." Well, I kind of just shrugged and apologized. I walked over to her and stood at her side and looked out over the place. Well, the best way to describe this place was like a bog. Well, what is a bog? A wetlands area. The ground is wet and soft with an accumulation of peat and other dead plant matter. I had a feeling this stuff below me was more than just dead plant matter. I was in hell. Why would the stuff here be made of the stuff from Earth? "Abigail, what's this stuff made of? It looks like a bog with trees and stuff," I began before she interrupted me. "Well, that's because it is a bog with trees and stuff," she said with that Abigail smirk. I noticed her eyes hadn't stopped glowing since we'd been here. I wanted to ask, but she'd most likely give me a smart-ass remark or something. I knew she took this stuff seriously, but there always seemed to be mirth and merriment in the way she went about things. I've never seen her type in a film before, that's for certain. "Watch your feet, Dan. This muck will suck you in quick if you're not paying attention. Also watch the skies and your back, and the ground and the trees," she told me. And I thought about what she'd say. It'd be something like, "Oh, 'cause you're in hell, Dan." We walked for a bit as we moved away from anything that remotely looked like liquid. She said during her time here, whenever she drank the stinking mess, she'd make a cup, run down and grab some, then run away. She said she'd almost been pulled under once, but she burned the thing's tentacles off. As we passed a dark pool of liquid, I swore I could see something beneath glaring at me. I saw there were multiple sets of shiny black eyes beneath the water. I reached forward to grab Abigail and warn her. "Just keep walking, Dan. If they leave the water, we run, you hear me?" I nodded as we picked up the pace. A few minutes later, we cleared a large section of trees, and I asked her why there were no sounds outside of water slapping the ground now and then. No birds, insects, or even devilish things. She told me that nothing here wanted to be eaten by anything else. Hell had ecology just like every other world. I nodded because, well, even though I could breathe, it was like taking in a lungful of rotten eggs with each breath. We reached an outcropping of stones, and Abigail peered over into the distance of the hellscape. Jagged outcroppings of hills and deep valleys lay before me. It was kind of like standing at the top of a large hill and looking out into a valley. But in that valley you could see smoke rising from various places, like from a house or a hut. They were the eerie sounds of beasts better left unseen and unmet. And the skies came alive as a large winged thing flew above at a distance. "Abigail, look, I know this is your thing, but how are we supposed to find her in all of this? Bogs, woods, hills, and no trail in sight?" I asked curiously. "Haven't you noticed my eyes since we've been here?" She prodded. "Yeah, I did. Well, I'm following her the way people who roam places like this follow each other and other things. Her hellish stink is peculiar to her, and I've bound both me and you to that stench. It's not a smell, but, well, her aura. She passed by here not more than a day ago." "That was a day ago? Well, you just jumped through that pool thing. Well, not more than 5 hours ago." And then I answered the question myself, seemingly catching on. "So, time moves a bit differently here, then." Abigail nodded and then added, "The way this works is that you only ever use maps in a place like this once you're inside a building or a structure, because those don't change unless the barmy inside said structure can change it on a whim." We walked over to a clearing and she grabbed a stick and then drew a square on the ground and random shapes to represent places. "Okay, this is us," she said, pointing to 2 stick figures. "This is the home of Duchess Seraphina, the vile Duchess of Death, or some shit. And for whatever dumb reason, you have business with her. Now you walk in this direction and think of her. You'll get there. If you get turned around and wind up walking back the way you came, but she's in your thoughts. You'll still get there. Distance doesn't matter in places like this. If you want to get somewhere, you'll get there. I think I understood somewhat now. In a place like this, you have to throw out what you know and just accept things the way they are, and try to influence it in some way to your benefit. I smiled and nodded at her. I used to be a scout, so traveling and learning things about it wasn't very difficult. See those twin spires over there in the far distance? It was hard to make out anything in this red haze, but she used to live here, so it's something she's used to. Yeah, I see it. Well, that's where she's headed. We can beat her there as long as you have that money still. I do, but it's just $10. I mean, what's the big deal about it? Come on. There's a river not far from here, and it will take us to those spires. It was about an hour of sneaking and moving about slowly and quietly to avoid being seen by the creatures here. We did run into another human woman, but she wasn't in the mood to chat. I didn't want to chat anyway. She had no eyes, but I could tell she was still watching us. Abigail forbid me to even think about speaking to anything here. Speak to nothing here. Let me do the talking. Whether it's alive or dead, you can't trust anything from this place, you hear me? She said, with all seriousness. Abigail was equipped to handle a place like this, and I wasn't. But it didn't stop me from saying something stupid. Look, you're from here, I said, regretting it immediately. I'm from southwest Philly, Dan. I just got stuck here for a bit, she said, with no sign of hurt or pain from my words. Well, this was her business. People probably said stupid things to her all the time. We arrived at the side of the stinking thing, and all about us was a sound of wailing and sorrow. I could sense deep anguish overriding the anger that was still in me from this place. I looked about and noticed that Abigail walked out in plain sight, as I almost wet myself from the sight before me. There was a gathering of creatures most foul to human senses. Two beings stood between us and the river, and in between those two beings was what appeared to be a humanoid of features I could not make out. The flesh was mottled green, and his chin sagged. The bottom of his body was torn and ragged, flowing off into nothingness. He looked at us and then bowed his head down again in shame. Above his head was a mark of some kind. One of the creatures was etching it on his head. Wisps of smoke and steam hissed from its touch. It was some form of living shadow thing, impossibly thin, with a skeletal horned head and bat-like wings in smoke-filled tatters behind it. I knew if this creature was in a room with you, you'd never see it before it was too late to do anything. And the other creature was a fat thing, in fineries remnant from some medieval hell. And the colours of its clothing were not so different from that of a feudal noble, but the grotesque thing that wore them was another thing to behold. It wore no shoes on the greasy-looking elephant-like feet it had. Its head resembled that of a frog and a lizard that had had sex with a pterodactyl, with the wings on it looking as if they'd arisen from the back and shoulders at the same time. I knew this place was off, but I had to resist every singular urge to run as fast and as far away as I could. I guess Abigail had noticed, as she slapped the shit out of me. Stay here. Those two things would cause you to have a very bad day. Well, we're lucky they're in the midst of a transaction, because if they wanted, one of them would snatch you while I dealt with the other, and you'd be that guy they're trading. I said nothing, only nodded. The urge to wet myself returned, and I turned to pee on the ground while making sure nothing else wanted me. I could hear Abigail talking to the fat one as the shadow thing had adjusted itself to stare at me. The fear I felt then was too much. Oh, it radiated cold and evil, and it hated me. But the way it had held the other man, I knew it would not slay me, at least not right away. That other man was dead, and I wasn't. If this was a transaction, then a living being would probably net a lot more than that pitiful creature it held. As angry and fearful as I was right now, I trusted her to know best. Not long after her moments of chatter with the things, they moved on, and Abigail returned, pulling me by the upper arm. I could only stare at the things as the man was given to the fat thing, and the shadow monster bowed and took flight, glaring at me as it vanished into nothingness, its captives wailing mixed with those of the spirits around us. What were those things? What the hell were those? I asked, shaken to the core. I felt as if my mind would shatter at the revelation of the existence of such things. Even though I'd watched her kill a house and fight a fairy tale night hag in Philly, well, the fat thing was a Kebula, and the other thing was a shadow demon. The guy in the middle was a purchase. We interrupted their business. I asked for passage to the edge of the water in return for something, she told me. Something like what? I asked, checking the skies and the shadows around me. I'll give it a vial of the hag's blood. They could use it if I decided to let her live, she said. She said it very casually, too. Look, Dan, this is a hell dimension. There's not a lot of good here. Good comes and goes on various missions of mercy and such, but this is hell. I nodded in despair as I realized that I truly was in a world not my own. The good thing, Dan, is that the human mind is very resilient. If you spent another month here and learned to survive, these things would still be scary, but become commonplace. Well, you get used to it. That's the gift our species has. Once we survive a thing and see it enough, we grow numb to it. She sat on the shore of a river, near some sort of man or monster-made dock for some time. She cautioned me that this was the river Lethe. Its waters would make you forget everything the longer you were exposed to it. A splash could make you forget the last few minutes. A dunk could make you forget the last few hours. An immersion, well, let's not go there. We talked more as we waited. She told me of the many places she'd been to, and things she'd seen or fought. She always laughed when she told me of the various times she got her ass handed to her. Says it's one of the reasons she doesn't kill everything we consider supernatural. She said there are populations of monsters that had their methods of survival, just as we had ours. And to us, a moral thing might not be the same as a moral thing to them. And the goal was to stop those that caused harm for no other reason than to do it. Not slaughter something we don't understand unless it was a threat. Finally, she said, standing looking into the distance. I stood and turned to look at an old wooden boat that had once seemed incredibly slow, but had also reached us with incredible speed. Is that who I think it is? I asked her. That's only one of who you think it is. Charon the ferryman is like a holy figure to them. The ferrymen are a full species with mastery of the river Lethe. This is their home. This is where they conduct business. And this is how you traverse all the hells and even a couple of the nicer places. The ferryman was a hooded and robed figure whose outfit was a flowing, tattered, dark grey thing. His skeletal face frightened me, but not to the extent the fat thing and the shadow thing had. I sensed evil, but no malice. From what Abigail told me, these things were professionals first. You stated where you wanted to go and paid them. It was a simple thing. Greetings, travelers. Where do you wish to go? It said, as if the air just flowed through the teeth, forming the words with them moving. To the court of the 2 spires, Abigail said. My fee is 2 gold pennies, it began, when Abigail motioned me forward. Give him the 10, Dan, and watch, she said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the $10 bill. When I looked at it, I'd expected to see Hamilton's face as I unfolded the paper money to give to the ferryman. What the hell? I said, looking in shock at a picture of Abe Lincoln. The date of production said March 1861. That's a demand note, Dan. The first real widely accepted paper money of the U.S. The ferrymen love this more than they love gold pennies, because of the sheer amount of souls they got to ferry about the plains during the Civil War in such a short amount of time. Well, it's a historical event for them. I handed the creature the money and watched it come to life then. Abraham Lincoln, it said, adding, this was a fine time to be a ferryman. So much profit was made then. It was a great 4 years on one landmass. He seemed pleased with the payment, holding it aloft as it vanished into nothingness. I'll give expedient service for you. Let us be off to the court of the 2 spires, it said as we left the dock at a clip. Of all the things that can have good dealings in hell, well, they're the ferrymen. Just pay them and you're good. Give them something special and you'll be remembered. Oh, there are still some evil SOBs, just don't cross them and you're protected while you travel with them. she said. Well then, to the Court of the Two Spires. Right, I just need you to pause here for a moment. I'm not crazy, you're not crazy. I just learned 100% that we most definitely are not alone. There's more to life than humanity out there. Out where? Everywhere. Some of it's not nice. So, let's welcome you to the Two Spires. The trip through hell, a hell, was weird. For all of my dread, and believe me, there was a lot of that, I felt like an explorer. I felt like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. I knew I could die at any moment, but this was exhilarating. This particular hell is not like the hells you read or hear about. There was no mass gnashing of teeth. No demons were screaming just to scream for screaming's sake. You could hear the sounds of the area like the winds and the water flowing, but the ferryman himself was as silent as death itself. And the way it looked, he was like death itself. We could see the spires in the distance. They seemed so far away. But as Abigail told me, distance didn't matter here or anywhere on most planes. As we sailed, the oddest thought came to me. Hey, Abby, I said as she turned to look at me. She looked so damn strong standing on the prow. She looked as if she were leading the charge of the Light Brigade. Yeah? She replied. Let's say you were in a movie. Like the one where the girl comes out of the TV, or the one where the girl croaks a lot and possesses that house in Japan. Could you beat them? I asked, genuinely curious. Nope, she replied, not looking back, but I could tell she was smiling. Really? I said in return, shocked at the admission. Oh, I'd erase them. I'd erase them out of existence, she said, turning to face me. In my line of work, there are things I can beat, but they just keep coming back to cause more harm. Other things, while physical in some ways, are mental in others, she said, sitting down. There are things I have to let exist, regardless of what happens to them or us. I have no idea who made this up, but I can sense that's how it's supposed to be. Well, those two in those films are what's known as mimetic. They'll exist as long as people think of and remember them. Well, I've told you before that I can mark, protect, record, and erase things. Well, when I erase something, it's just gone, she said, making the poof motion. Do you know where they go to when they're erased? I asked. Nope, I don't care to either. I despise mimetic. A mimetic is a shitty thing that haunts places like Reddit and emails. A mimetic exists as long as people think they do. They get in people's heads, and they make them go insane. Well, werewolves and dogmen eat people, but they generally don't do that. Skinwalkers are just assholes that like to scare folk, unless they have a vendetta. But a mimetic is worse. They don't even kill for profit. They just do it because they can. I could see her growing angry now as she spoke of them. I hate bullies, Dan. And mimetics are bullies. Fuck 'em, she said, turning away. Well, I left alone, and for a moment forgotten how this place enhances anger. I guess even she wasn't immune, even after having lived here for so long. As we came around a bend, the Court of the Two Spires came into view as we closed upon them. Well, 10 minutes ago they'd seemed like they were 20 miles away, and in the turn of the bend of the letter, it was only about 3 city blocks away. All the fear came back to me then, when I could make out what the gigantic things were in reality. The spires were the skeletal remains of 2 enormous humanoid entities. One of the things looked inhuman, with skeletal wings jutting out of the back, its body merged into the rock face as evil things flitted about it. All manner of demon, fiend, and devil were milling about. I had no wish to enter or even go near the place. I regretted coming here. I'd have nightmares about this forever. Well, that's if my mind doesn't snap under the strain. If other humans or human-like beings dealt with these things frequently, well, I have to ask how. How is it possible? Abby did say that the more you dealt with this, the easier on the mind it became. I don't know if I believed her. But I saw her do something insane. She pulled out her phone, holding it like she was taking pictures. She was taking pictures. She motioned me over. "Oh, I am not posing for a selfie in hell," I began. "I'm not getting off this ferry with all those things about." "We have to. You only paid for this trip," she shrugged. "But you'll be known forever to the ferryman as one of the better passengers, if that helps." "The ferry's ended. Our business is done. Please exit the boat. I have another fare waiting." "Thank you for your business, Dan Josephson of Philadelphia," it said as it nodded its bony head to me. So we exited the craft and stood upon the dock. I watched as the ferry left, wishing I'd had another 5 or 10 on me. I'll make sure in future to always keep a spare, just in case. As I stood looking at the other spire, it was more human-looking in nature. But it wasn't a human head atop the skeleton. It had a large ibis-like head attached. The things near this one were more grounded. There were no flying things about it. Every grotesque monstrosity here walked or hovered. Some slithered, leaving behind slimy gore trails, and others stood about chatting as if this was normal. I guess this was normal for them, but not for me. "Why did we come here, Abby? What was the purpose? I thought we were chasing the hag," I asked, not wanting to move another inch. "Well, this is where she came," she replied. "Why? I thought she wanted you dead." "She does, but that's the thing about hags. They love to make deals and break them. When things don't go their way, they seek out the contractor who made her a deal, and then allowed an asshole like me to screw it up." "So, what's the goal? There's no way even you could kill or fight through all of these mockeries of life," I retorted. "One thing you'll learn when you travel as I do is that you can't murder hobo to make your way through reality to get ahead. That only works for a while, until it doesn't." "Okay then, what's the plan?" "We make a counteroffer," she said, pointing ahead. I turned to see what she was pointing at. It was the hag, that hellish creature she fought on the roof of the house. She stood at the foot of the giant skeletal structure watching us as we passed by the creatures of hell. And there was literally no point in watching my back. Everywhere I looked was a thing from nightmares. There were things here that could kill me and eat my soul in an instant. I'd probably never sleep well again, and I'd go broke with all the mental help I'd been needing after all this. The dogmen, singular, was one thing. To learn of dogmen as a population was something else. Well, anyway, we moved toward the red-eyed bitch that had caused me to be here. She stood smiling a too wide grin. I got a real good look at her, and it was like something from a movie. She was ultra-thin and bony. She stood knock-kneed and hunched over. Her bare grey mottled breasts hung like another set of arms. And she wore jewelry, and I use that in the loosest terms possible, made of teeth, bones, and skulls, over the red, tattered clothing about her. Her hair was greasy and black, with a white streak up the middle between the horns on her head. Well, it took you long enough to find me, Hunter," she said, rubbing her hands together. "I didn't think you'd show up on custody. I find it pleasant myself, and what about you, little human meat? Too far from home for you?" She pointed a bony hand toward me, and I instinctively moved a bit behind Abigail. She stepped in between me and it. "Well, if I'm here, hag, then you know I'm not a hunter. The humans who travel the plains are not like Dan. You know full well Earth humans are a different breed entirely." The way Abigail had said it, as if our species, I guess my species, were somehow lesser, and those other types of humans had dealings with these plains, well, I admit I felt like a lesser person at that observation. The world we'd come from was just a hunting ground for these creatures. We weren't much to even consider outside of meat and harvesting. We were food to the beasts of the night, and even our best, the hunters of these things, had never come here, at least not like Abigail does. "I used to live here, hag. Carcery stinks, and so do you," Abigail stated, adding, "Now shall we proceed about our business, so I can leave this cesspool?" I noticed some of the creatures close by turn and snicker when she said that, but Abigail stood firm. "Yes, you house-killing bitch," the hag retorted. I must admit I was at a loss as to what the hell was going on. "I thought we came here to kill her,"
I asked in a whisper. Abigail bent toward me as we walked into a hall of bone, and I gagged as we neared a fountain that steamed with an acidic stench. We did, but once I figured out where she was going, a new plan came to mind. I knew what she was planning by coming here, she said to me. And what was that? Well, she's taken me to the small claims court. I killed her house, and she knew she couldn't kill me, so she'd return to the thing that gave her a place to ply her trade on Earth. She would plead that her bargain, whatever it is, was not fulfilled due to your presence and then calling me. Well, wait, so if I hadn't called you, we wouldn't even be here? I asked. Well, probably not you, but I would have eventually found the house and killed it anyway. You said she couldn't kill you. Why not? I know you're different than I am, but are you immortal or something? I asked. No, I can be killed, but things like her bargain in souls, and I'm really hard to kill. My soul is currently promised to 3 other beings. Even if I die before they do, they'd have to squabble over the bits of my soul, but the things that made me will not let go so easily. You'll see, Abigail said as I stopped walking to consider her words. Come, eat, the hag motioned. I haven't all day to deal with your type. As we made our way up the staircase of bleached bones, the hag kept looking back at me as if I was some prize to be won. It was like I was worth all the gold in the world. But I realized I wasn't. From everything I've experienced today, a single human soul isn't worth much outside of being turned into a foot soldier in some red war that Abigail told me about. The war between the monsters of all the hells, while the Celestials watched and guarded. Oh, shit. Why are you here, Dan? I asked myself. We made it to an open-air room on the 3rd or 4th rib of the thing. As we walked toward the door, we were greeted by a burly dog-faced thing in gleaming armor and carrying a polished golden spear thing. State your business, it growled at us, and the hag moved forward. I would have words with your master, beast. Inform it that Tartarus of Gehenna has come to file a complaint. And you? It asked of Abigail. I'm the thing she's going to file a complaint about. I'm Abigail Mitchell of Earth. Well, it sniffed Abigail as if it was looking for something else. I sense Carceri on you also, it stated. Bring your human and enter. The dog thing didn't even look in my direction. Inside it was more a courtroom with creatures of ill intent, standing on the sides as they all sought audience with the master. Well, I must say it was a very orderly affair. It was terrifying, but orderly. To the side, the dog guard thing barked, pushing aside other monsters. You shall kneel before the lord of this place, Matnior, the ruler of Klimp. Well, everyone knelt, as did I. You do not want to stand out in a place like this. Ah, Tartarus, came a voice from behind a large table covered in what looked like flesh torn from something large. Why do I smell the scent of failure on you, hag? Why have you come here? Matnior said in a monotone voice. I had no wish to see a Hell Lord, but I opened my eyes and looked forward as the high-backed chair turned about. I actually smirked for a quick moment rather than appear frightened, and the elbow Abigail gave me made me stop immediately. The thing that had wrought so much terror from the things in the room, and even commanded Abigail's respect, looked like a fleshy version of a bubble blower and a stick figure. But even I could see that its body was powerfully corded and ripped, and those hands held dangerous clothes. The head of it was head-shaped, but there was a massive hole where the face should be and just ears on the sides of the head. It was a gaping maw of darkness. And why did you bring that with you? It said, pointing at Abigail. Abigail stood quiet and said nothing. I despise the remade ones. They're nothing but trouble, exceedingly hard to remove stains of the universe. Years ago, we made the pact, you and I. Though you'd furnish me with a key to leave this prison plane in return for my services on Earth in a nation of my choosing, and the habitat in which to live.
You promised that humans would only be able to contest me after 7 upon 7 years. Well, this is year 13, and yet this human, she said, pointing to Abigail, has destroyed the home you provided, and I can no longer send you the souls to which you can bargain with. That is true, hag. No human has contested you, it said. Well, this human has. I claim its life for you and its soul to be used as you please, the hag said, pointing at me. Come forward, meat. Speak, and be aware that this hole for a head can sense deception, for Othrys is a plain of liars and traitors after death, it said as I gritted my teeth and carefully moved from behind Abigail. Your lordship, I am Dan Josephson, and I noticed that the house this woman had used for nefarious purposes, and I'm much like the guard dog. I heard it growl behind me as I said it. Your guard here. Look, I'm a cop, and I have to alert my superiors of crimes being committed. A police officer, how noble, how quaint, how truthful, it stated before continuing. So, police officer, the hag says you were the cause of her troubles on the 13th year. How do you plead? Not guilty, I said, shutting one eye. Hag, the human speaks the truth. No human has contested you in 7 upon 7 years, the bubblehead said. Then what do you call that? The hag said, pointing at Abigail. He summoned her. She destroyed my property I was using in your service. Well, she was even angrier than before. She huffed but made no motion to attack Abigail. Is this true, police officer Dan? Did you summon this remade to destroy property not belonging to you? Matnior asked, folding his fingers together. I don't know what summoning is, sir. I just called Abigail because she's dealt with things like this before. I swear that's all I did. I yammered, the bottom falling out in my gut as panic threatened to set in. I looked at Abigail for comfort and saw that mirth in her eyes again. What was she planning? I have no wish to speak to a remade one. You and your kind are a pox on reality, but I am aware of your nature, if not the full extent of your power. But speak to you I must. The human meat has spoken no falsehoods, and you are not fully human anymore. Thus the hag's protests have no merit, Matnior began. She will pay the soul she owes for the remainder of her terms, or her eternity shall be spent as a worm grovelling for stature in the Wed War's shitpits. But since you have demolished her home, she'll be punished now, as she has nowhere to return to, and I will not give a second key from Carceri. Even the Titans have no such claim. Abigail stepped forward. Then, may I propose a counter-offer, good Matnior? I sense bedevilment in you, girl. What are you on about? Well, I love Philadelphia and wish to see it improve. You can do so with the hag's help and strict compliance to rules I would blood oath her to follow on pain of eternal death here and now. She'd also be in place to fulfill your pact for not only this year, but for 7 upon 7, and 7 upon 7 more. I looked at Abigail in stunned amazement. What the hell had she been thinking? Why would she want to bring such a creature back to Earth? I knew there was nothing I could do to stop her. Maybe this was all a trick, and she couldn't be trusted after all. I bowed my head, and that's all I remember from that point, until I got back to Earth. I don't even remember how we returned. I do remember waking up at home with a terrible headache and the feelings of anger slowly leaving my body. I vaguely remember some of the creatures I saw there, not specific details, but vagaries. I remember the hag and the house with full clarity, the ride on the River Lethe, and the demonic courtroom, but not much of what occurred. I remember being questioned and being told I was being truthful, and I remember the hag being upset, and Abigail not saying much. After a few hours of further napping and eating, I gave Abigail a call. She told me she'd be over after a while. She said she had to check in on somebody first. When she arrived, I sat down with her.
I had to know what happened after I'd blacked out and wound up back home. Why it was so hard for me to remember anything else. She pulled out her cell phone and showed me pictures from that place that I'd have had a hard time wanting to remember, and then she pulled out a small vial of murky liquid. "What's that?" I asked. "It's water from the river Lethe. I took some to use on you because you're a friend and I don't want you suffering through those images every time you closed your eyes. Normal Earth humans are not ready for that yet. This is more in case you want to forget everything up to yesterday. But each sip is 5 hours," she told me, giving me the vial. I held it in my hand and looked at it. I'd just napped with no problems at all. Did she take out the really bad stuff? Well, I guess it worked first on those memories more harmful to the mind, leaving the less dangerous ones somewhat intact, if vague. "So, what happened then? What happened with the hag? Were we successful in killing her?" I asked, wanting to know if I'd done something badass or not. Abigail told me the whole thing, about us meeting her pact giver, and Abigail being taken to the hell version of Small Claims Court. How Abigail made a new deal to bring the hag back to Philly. "You did what?" I yelled, eyes wide. "I made a new deal. I did it not only to help the city, but to clean it up from some of the corruption." "How so?" I asked, with genuine curiosity. "The hag will be made a councilwoman. Her job will be to keep track of contracts that are used to harm rather than help the people of Philadelphia. She'll deal with them in her way, and only get my ire if she doesn't follow the many rules I set forth for her." "So we have an evil, otherworldly hag serving on the city council to help the city, and deal with those that harm the city. Who is she?" "Can't tell you that," she said, shrugging. "That's part of the deal." "So will the hag still steal people's souls and send them back to that Kasseri place?" "Well, only certain people now, and she'll have a limit of 3 per year, as agreed by the terms of the Blood Oath," she said. "So, well, our noble effort to enter hell wound up with the bad guy getting a job on the city council, huh?" "Yep." "No, slay the evil witch to save the people, huh?" "Nope." Well, she'd go on to fill in the parts I couldn't remember and leave out the details of some more horrific things. She did tell me I'd make a good hunter one day, though. That was what she was training Michelle to be. When I asked her about the Blood Oath and what that entailed, she told me the hag's soul would be unable to be used as payment or punishment until their pact was done. And she added that no other being could lay claim to her soul while the pact was in place. I told her that in her line of work I guessed it was a good thing to have this kind of curse, when no one could lay claim to your spirit. She then told me something that made my eyes go wide. She told me she wasn't worried, either way. I asked her why. "'Cause, silly, I have 21 curses on me already," she said, smiling that Abigail smile. And there you have it, folks. The reason I'm not insane. Well, according to Abigail, the more you see these things, the more your brain rewrites itself. It also helped that she was around to slap the hell out of me when I felt a little off. The little vial I have of the otherworldly river water helped me forget some things, but the pictures she took on that damn phone remind me that it did happen. Well, that's it for now. One day I'll tell you about the Dogman, or that time in Upper Derby. Oh, God, Upper Derby. There's something strange about the FBI's holiday party. By Suspicious Nail 949. December 23rd, 2003. The rookie looked like he was just about jittery enough to shake his suit off as he made his way over to the hulking brute of a man that was Agent Kane Schultz, better known by his nickname, Bull. Like his namesake, Bull was massive, towering over anyone he spoke to, and also, like his namesake, he had quite the temper, known equally for his fits of rage as his splendid track record as an agent. Mr. Schultz? The rookie asked, approaching his desk. Sitting in his office chair, Bull nearly matched the rookie in height. He slowly turned around, clearly annoyed at having been interrupted,
and the look he gave the rookie incited a gulp. "What do you want?" he growled. "Can't you see I've got work to do?" The rookie had gone through a full FBI training, along with the extra steps required to join the supernatural branch, neither of which being a mean feat. But this, standing in front of Bull Schultz, clearly terrified him. It's my, he stuttered. "Spit it out," Bull snapped, and he jumped. Sorry, he quickly apologized. "There's just, one of the older agents told me to ask you for the file on a creature." "Oh yeah, what is it?" Bull asked, folding his arms as he knew something was up. "It's the rookie glanced down at the paper in his hands one last time, cleared his throat and said, "Yeah, the biggest dickers." He quickly followed it with, "I know it doesn't sound real, but Agent..." "You want the file on biggest dickers?" Bull repeated, leaning his chin on his hand. "Oh, that doesn't sound like..." the rookie said before trailing off. "Yeah, I'm just gonna..." "Yeah, see if you can find some common sense while you're at it," Bull snapped, pointing away from the desk, and the rookie hastily retreated. Jesus Christ, these kids keep getting younger every year. Then he stood up, glancing around for a moment. Pearson. Damn it, you're a waste of bureau resources. Get some work done." I ducked back into the office I shared with my partner, Colt Tally, just before Bull had started searching for me, and I let loose fits of laughter, much to the chagrin of the room's other occupants. "Would you grow up?" he sighed with disdain, pushing back from his desk to look down on me. He played the same joke on every class of rookies, and it was never terribly fun to begin with. I climbed to my feet at that, dusting off my uniform with a smile still spread across my face, and said, "Without tradition, what are we? Hazing the rookies is a mainstay of American society. We're the supernatural branch of the FBI, not a high school football team," Colt reminded me. "Protecting the nation is our tradition." Whatever," I replied, rolling my eyes and slinking back into my office chair when I saw Bull give up on trying to find me. After a full moment of staring at my computer screen, I groaned. This is awful. Let's cut out early, go see Elf." "All right, yeah, we'll tell Hebert what? We have to get home early to beat the traffic?" "We live here," Colt retorted. "You're getting your time off. Be happy about that." For some strange reason, the supernatural branch doesn't automatically give agents time off for Christmas. A travesty, I know, but I'm always able to request the 25th off, and they've always approved it. What do you ever do here without me?" I sighed sarcastically, shaking my head. "Work, in all likelihood," he replied, without missing a beat. "Which is what I should be doing now, but instead I'm talking to you." "I'm honored," I replied, placing my hand over my heart. "Truly putting your game of spider solitaire on hold is a noble sacrifice." "Yeah, go bother someone else," he told me, not even bothering to look up from the screen this time as he typed away. "I'm nearly finished with this week's case file." "Your insistence on taking some poor desk jockey's work never fails to amaze me," I told him, shaking my head as I stood up. "I'll go see what the word is at the water cooler. You're no fun." "I never have been," he said. And it should go without saying, but the water cooler at the FBI Supernatural branch was the mother of all office water coolers. Well, the water cooler itself was really nothing special. Most office water coolers aren't. It's the talk that goes on around it that sets it apart from the crowd, and that day was no exception. After tiptoeing behind Bull's desk, I made my way across the office to the group that always seemed to be huddled around the cooler like moths to a bulb. Sometimes I wonder if our branch is the best use of government funding. There were 4 agents there, 2 pairs of partners, and they greeted me as I joined them. I recognized agents Josh Matthews and Edison Sosa, though the 2 female ones I didn't know. "Pearson," Matthews nodded, raising his plastic cup to me. I see you got to Agent Owen. Well done. I spread my arms. What can I say? I'm good at what I do. Of course, Hebert wishes that what I did was work, but alas. They chuckled at that. Did you guys hear about the party? One of the agents I didn't recognize asked as I filled a cup. My ears perked up. A party? I asked. Yeah, the office Christmas party. The agent I assumed to be her partner added. We got a memo inviting us to Building E on the 25th. I didn't recognize the agent it was from. Well, not recognizing an agent's name is far from uncommon. I didn't even know these two. But not recognizing a building is a completely different story. I'd been with the bride for 6 years, and in that time, there had never been a Building E. Well, A, B, C, D, sure, but no E, though. That's impossible, I told her. Building E? I know, it doesn't exist, she quickly assured me. That's why I thought it was weird. But didn't you get anything? Nope, I replied. But I may have to crash this party. No one in the branch throws a Christmas party without inviting Tia Pearson. Well, up to you, she said. Christmas Day at 7, Building E. Oh, I'll be there, I replied. By the way, I don't think we've been introduced. What's your name? I'm Sophia Roth, and this is my partner, Peyton Wagner, the first replied, then gestured to the other. She's a rookie. I'm in my 2nd year. Pleasure, I nodded, finishing my water. I'll see you Thursday night. See you then, Sophia said. The gears on my brain working, trying to figure out what to do in this odd scenario. I returned to my office and paused in the doorway. So, I said, drawing out the end of the word to attract Colt's attention. So? Colt asked, clearly annoyed as he glanced up from his computer. There's a Christmas party on the 25th, and we're going, I told him, not trying very hard to suppress a smile. By we, you of course mean... I mean we. It's after work, so you don't have any excuse to miss it, I finished. I wasn't going to tell him in case I was wrong, but the real reason I wanted him there was because something was setting off my gut, and I might need backup. If this is going to be such a grand party, we would have gotten an email, Colt returned. How did you find out about it? You haven't checked your inbox in 3 months. Well, that's because if someone has something important to say, they say it, I said. Or some rookie. Agent Roth, I believe. She told me about it. He paused. Agent Sophia Roth? He asked, cocking his head. I appeared to have garnered his interest. Suppose it is, I said, grinning slyly as I walked to his desk, smelling blood in the water. Would that change your opinion of the party as a whole? Well, it was just a question, he replied. I don't think it was just a question, I said, wagging my finger. I think that you would very much like to go to a party with Agent Sophia Roth. You're being immature. I asked a question, he snapped moodily. Oh, fine, if you won't answer, I'll go. Where is it? You'll go, will you? I asked, leaning on his desk. That doesn't seem like a very accurate response given your lack of interest. Answer the question, Colt said, ignoring my comment. Where's the party? You're always bugging me about being more festive. Take your win. Well, that's the thing. It's at Building E, I told him, momentarily allowing the topic to change. I know it doesn't exist, but your, friend, Agent Roth, assured me that that's where the invite told her to go. She's not my... He began, then paused. After a moment he said, This isn't one of your silly little pranks, is it? Because it's not a very good one. That's exactly why you should know it's not mine, I replied. I'd never stoop this low. Way too easy. You just made a rookie-ass bull for the file on Biggest Dickers, he pointed out. Exactly. I have standards, I returned. Anyway, let's check it out. I highly doubt we'll end up collateral damage of a rookie prank, and if we do, I don't know, call it karma. What, for all the pranks you've pulled? Colt sat back, folding his arms. It doesn't sound like karma to me. Are you in or out, Buddha? I asked, standing up and backing away from his desk. I'm in, he sighed, rolling his eyes. After a beat, he added, I'm gonna regret it, I'm sure, but I'm in. I nodded. I felt more comfortable with him there as backup, though. I was a bit worried he'd spend too much time under the mistletoe and end up not being there if something actually went down. And oh boy, did something actually go down. But we'll get to that later. December 24th. The previous day I'd been called into a last-minute meeting, preventing me from investigating the so-called Building E. But on Wednesday, the day before the party, I had a chance to circle the massive perimeter of the branch's national headquarters. We're located in Denver, Colorado, a few miles out of the main city, and our compound is disguised using some masking technology developed by someone. I don't know, they probably went over it in training. There'd always been, as long as I can remember, 5 buildings. A, B, C, D, and I for information. That's the archive building. A was the main office building. B contained laboratories and other research facilities. C held all communications, and D was where all the classified things happened. I've never been in there. The archive building was shaped like an hourglass, I guess, an architectural decision made by the head archivist, but the other 4 were just normal office buildings. As I walked around the headquarters, rubbing my shoulders against the chilly Colorado air, I was thinking about how it wouldn't make sense for a Building E. We had all we needed in those 5. But after I rounded the corner of Building B, there it was. Building E. Looming out from the other building's shadow at the far end of the compound. Well, I'll be damned, I whispered to myself, pausing at the base of this mysterious structure. It looked like some combination of the other 4. The architectural style matched up with the FBI's theme, and even had the card slot at the entrance that would unlock the door. There was only one story, which could have explained how I'd missed it before among the towering buildings it was nestled behind, but it was still odd that I'd never noticed it. As I stared in confusion at the building, I began to notice that something was off. It was featureless. Everything was plain, untextured, like the building was 3 miles away and I couldn't make out any details. I squinted, wondering if my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the walls remained unnaturally smooth and the windows retained that oddly dark tint. I took a step forward to investigate further, and that's when the stench hit me. Something was emitting a rancid, pungent scent, assailing my nostrils like a freight train. I almost stumbled back, coughing at the smell, but I managed to regain my composure enough to bury my nose deep in my arm to block it out. Jesus Christ, I thought to myself, shaking my head and wincing. Someone's got to get a janitor over here. I fumbled around in my pocket with my other hand, eyes watering from the smell, and pulled my keycard out of it. However, when I slid it into the slot, nothing happened. Not that I was denied access. That would be accompanied by a red light and a buzz of rejection. No, nothing happened. I suppose the sensor must have been broken. And I shrugged, figuring that now I knew the building was there was no need to spend more time suffering through the smell, and backed away as quickly as I could, returning to work. I explained what I'd seen to Colt, but he didn't seem to think it was all that strange, figuring that they were probably getting ready for this grand party, and that it was closed off until then. He told me he'd check it out after work, just in case. And with that, the day of the party arrived. December 25th. When I got there, maybe a little late, around 7:30, I saw that Building E had undergone a complete transformation overnight. Red and green strands of tinsel looped around the entire exterior, and spotlights placed strategically around the building cast rays of light on them, setting festive sparkles out across the night sky. A false chimney had been erected, with smoke billowing out and an abandoned sleigh next to it, and lights and sounds coming from inside signified that the party was already well underway. I whistled, standing outside in a light flurry of snow that had sprung up, unimpressed with the effort they'd been willing to put into a mere holiday party. Strangely enough, Colt hadn't returned my calls all day, and an agent I spoke with said he didn't show up to work, which I didn't think much of at the time. You know, flu season and all that. And it certainly didn't come to mind when I was about to enter what looked like one of the more entertaining Christmas parties I'd been to in some time. And, on the inside, it matched. A cheery holiday song rang out from the unseen speakers. A crowd of people I could only assume were agents danced around, some anointed with pointed Santa hats, all with varying amounts of alcohol already consumed. I nodded, looking around the party for someone I recognized to mingle with, but it seemed like I hadn't met anyone there. Sure, it was only at a glance, but even when I looked longer, there wasn't a single familiar agent. That was impossible. There was a pretty big difference between not knowing a few agents around the office and going to a party of this magnitude and not seeing anyone I knew. I began to make my way through the crowd, searching at least for Colt, someone who I hoped would be there, and even him I couldn't find. As I dodged dancing agents, worrying my way to the other side of the room, I started to attract stares from the party's attendants. I muttered greetings and nodded, excusing myself as the stares turned from those of slight annoyance to confusion, which set off the alarm bells in my head that had already been ringing to some degree for quite a bit of time. I chose one agent at random and approached her, smiling in a half-hearted attempt at a greeting. "Hi, my name's Tia." "I'm sorry, I don't believe we've met," she replied, cocking her head at me. "Were you invited here?" "Well, actually, Agent Roth was the one," I answered. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was a VIP event." She paused for a moment, looking confused, and then said, "I'm sorry, I don't know if you're supposed to be here." "All right, I'll look into it." I nodded, about as confused as she appeared, and then walked away. As I did, I glanced over my shoulder and noticed that the agent, along with several around her, were all staring at me in a rather odd manner. "Take a picture, it'll last longer," I muttered, not particularly intending for them to hear it, as I made my way deeper into the party. However, as I weaved in and out of the crowd, dodging agents, I ended up slamming right into one who'd been standing in my path, sending me stumbling backward as I apologized profusely, feeling like I'd hit a brick wall. And when I looked up, I saw why. I'd bumped into Bull Schultz. He stood over me, glowering down, and I was immediately struck by the similarity to his namesake. My initial relief at finally seeing someone I recognized quickly turned to, well, fear, and I gulped. "Oh, hey, Bull, nice to... sorry about this morning. That was just, a joke. "Who are you?" he grunted. I looked sideways at him. "Bull, it's me. Look, I consistently top the list of your least favorite agents. What's up?" As I stared at him, though, I began to notice little things. His face didn't seem quite right. It felt like Bull's, but that was just because it was on Bull's body. His bone structure, his mouth, his nose, everything seemed like it was just thrown together in some amalgamation of facial features. "I'm just gonna..." I trailed off, mumbling as I dropped my drink on the carpet and backed up. "You're not supposed to be here," he growled. He didn't follow as I backed away. Suddenly the room began to feel a whole lot more crowded, and it seemed as if the dancing agents were pressing in towards me, trapping me in. As I looked around, I began to notice things similar to the agent that looked like Bull. I saw features of agents I recognized, a nose here, a face there, and so on, and it stirred something in my memory. A faint inkling of an archive I'd gone over long, long ago, something Colt probably knew far more about than I did. And then I remembered the smell, and the odd vague details the building had seemed to have the day before. I remembered that Colt hadn't been at work all day. And then it clicked. My eyes widened, and I yanked my radio out from under my shirt. Dialing it to the proper frequencies, I began to shove my way through the party towards a stairway at the back of the room. Night shift, this is Pearson. I have a Class 3 scenario in Building E. That's correct, Building E, I said, as loudly as I dared, though it was evidently too loud. The agents noticed, and with blank, ominous stares began to close in on me, blocking my path to the stairs. Repeat, Building E. Reinforcements are needed. I believe a Yakuza is in play, I quickly said, before cocking my arm back and hurling my radio at the false agent in front of me. It caught him squarely on the nose, surprising him, and I took advantage of his momentary distraction, charging forward. I knocked him backwards, his arms flung out of the crowd, reaching to restrain me, but I'd gotten a good enough start to clear them, breaking for the stairs as the partygoers fell in behind me. I didn't look back. I knew all there was to be seen was a horde of creatures mimicking humanity, yet inhuman in their relentless pursuit. I burst through the door of the stairwell, vaulting over the railing and landing with a thud on the flight below, wincing as I hadn't paid nearly enough attention during our tuck and roll training. However, I didn't have time to linger on the sharp pain in my left ankle, so I pushed through the doorway on that floor to reveal exactly what I'd hoped for. Over in the corner opposite me, I saw 3 unconscious forms. Colt, along with Agent Roth and Agent Wagner, and then, in the center of the dark, dusty basement, a massive, pulsating purple organism, veins running criss-cross patterns across its surface, and a gooey liquid emanating from its many pores. I didn't have much time to react. I had had the foresight to bring my gun along, so as I ran further into the basement to escape the creatures not too far behind me, I tugged it out of my back holster. However, just as I took aim, I stumbled on an unseen protrusion from the purple mass and fell to the ground. I let out a curse, finally glancing back at the horde streaming out of the stairwell. They looked like mindless zombies, pouring towards me with only one goal in mind. An identical blank rage thinly veiled in each of their expressions. I gulped, turned back around, and fired my pistol into the gelatinous mass, hoping I'd remembered something right. And as soon as the first bullet made contact, I knew I had. The entire lump exploded in a shower of purple blood, coating me from head to toe in the substance, doing so just as the front of the horde had reached me. As the leader, Bull's mimic, stretched out a hand to grab me, it suddenly began to melt into the same purple goo that covered me, the rest of its arm and body following not long after. The other creatures in the mob exhibited similar effects, and within moments, so did the walls, at least the ones that weren't simply made of dirt. The entirety of Building E was melting down into the purple mucus, what had moments ago been an entire complex being reduced to mere sludge. I crawled over to the unconscious agents, confirming that they were just unconscious and not dead, and sat next to them for a few minutes, cradling my injured ankle while I waited. It wasn't long before the night shift pulled us out of the pit the creature had dug for the basement, and everyone made it out okay. It turned out Colt had gone in after work to look into it, just like he said he would, and the Yakuza, the name for this creature, had lured him into the basement before injecting him with a sedative. Agents Roth and Wagner had apparently been the targets, as they'd been invited to the party. They told us the creature had seemed much more prepared for them than for Colt or I. We don't know why the creature was after them, or if it was sent by someone, but an investigation is being opened at this very moment. Yakuzas are annoying things. They're shapeshifters that anchor around their heart. The purple blob I shot to kill this one, and once their heart takes root they can transform into anything, organic or inorganic, no matter how large. This one had taken the form of a building, copying architecture from the other four, and a host of agents, copying features from whoever it observed and lured real agents in. Well, the thing is, it takes longer for it to transform the bigger the disguise is, and this was obviously a very big disguise. So when I'd seen it, it was most likely in the early stages, explaining the blank features and deactivated card scanner. Well, all in all, it was one strange Christmas. I should have known better than to expect the FBI to throw a decent holiday party, but I suppose hindsight's 20/20. So, if you receive an invitation to a party this holiday season that you don't recognize, or if you notice a rotten smell around a co-worker you just can't remember seeing before, stay away. Stay far away. Oh, and in case anyone was wondering, Colt never worked up the nerve to ask out Agent Rob. Bummer. Maybe next week some vampires will throw a New Year's Eve party. And so once again, we reach the end of tonight's podcast. My thanks as always to the authors of those wonderful stories, and to you for taking the time to listen. Now, I'd ask one small favor of you. Wherever you get your podcast from, please write a few nice words and leave a 5-star review, as it really helps the podcast. That's it for this week, but I'll be back again same time, same place, and I do so hope you'll join me once more. Until next time, sweet dreams and bye-bye.